In this tutorial, we are going to learn how to find the tax record sheet from looking on RealTrax. So you can see here we're at the main page on RealTrax after you have logged in. And there are two ways to find a tax record sheet for an individual property. And what we're going to do now is find one of them, and then we're going to go to the next. The first thing that you would do to pull a tax record sheet, so whenever I ask you to pull a tax record sheet on a property, you're going to know how to do this. First thing you do, go to the top bar, scroll across to tax, scroll down to CRS tax system, click on that. Now the tax record system is going to come up. From here there are a few items that you need to make sure selected correctly. First off, for each city that we give you, they are going to have corresponding counties. And Nashville would be Davidson County, Hendersonville and Gallatin would be Sumner County. Moral of the story is to make sure that you have the right county selected, because if you don't, you're not going to have the right city, and then when you push in the address, you're not going to find the property. So let's go ahead and try one here. It is going to be Sumner County, and I will be letting you know what county to select with this, so you will already know this. And then I'm going to always select all city names. We don't have to get specific, so long as we know the county, we can select all city names. We don't even need the owner's last or first initial, last name or first initial. Most of the time we may have a seller that we've talked to, and they may be the person that we're trying to list their property or even purchase their property. But in all reality, the name on the deed may be different, so you don't want to use that as a reliable source. So we're going to do it by address. So for this example, we are going to use 112 Water's Edge. So we would have sent you an email with this information, and then you would have seen that it was 112 Water's Edge for the street address. And then from there, you can try this way. Sometimes it may not pull up because the name may be spelled differently. Here you can see that it is 112 Water's Edge Lane did come up. And what you want to always do is click on the owner's name. That's going to bring up the actual tax record sheet. So let's do that now. And now that the tax record sheet comes up, this is going to be handy for when you're doing research on the property as well. If you're ever doing property research for us, this is going to be a reliable source. The first thing that I would do is make sure the address is correct, that you have the correct property pulled up. You can also see Ginger E. Daniel. It has last name first on this, but Ginger E. Daniel is the owner of it. And it's actually a guy named Bob and Ginger, so that would make sense. From here, when you're doing market research, you want to make sure that the square footage is accurate. And for this one, you can see the tax record, which is the most reliable source that we have, other than if the seller adds additions to the property and lets us know this, is the tax record sheet. So this says square footage is 2,166 square feet. Now, you're going to notice, well, later in the tutorials and the videos, I'm going to use this example, and you will notice that the square footage is actually larger, reflecting larger on the listing that they had, that these sellers had. The home was showing around 2,400 or 2,500 square feet, and then the square footage here is showing 2,166. So just for future reference, when you see those numbers differently on a past listing, when looking at the tax record sheet, we want to make sure why it's different. If it's larger on the listing, it could be because this owner, Ginger, added extra square footage to the home, and she just hasn't reported it to the tax assessor's office yet. So we want to make sure that that's accurate, but you would use that with the market research. When you pull market research, you would want to know the square footage of the property. Here's where you would get that every time. And then also you can see how much they received a loan on in 1996 when they did that. And other than that, you can see where the square footage is broken down. You can see they're saying they have 882 square feet on the main story. The upper stories, they have 864 total, it looks like. And then you can see basement, they have square footage. and an attached garage. So you can just see extra items about the property, as well as bedrooms and baths. Well, this one doesn't reflect it, but most of the time you're going to see bedrooms and baths right here. So you'll know how many bedrooms and baths when you're doing market research. So whenever I need you to get a tax record sheet, that's all you do is you would go here, you would pull this tax record sheet for me, and then you would go ahead and print it to PDF, to Adobe. You can see when I do this that it comes up as Adobe PDF. So I would print that, and then I would save it in the correct folder. And what we're going to do is share a folder with you, so that way you can actually save them in the client's folders, so that we have that updated. And we'll just do an example here of how I would save it. I would go to print, and then it's going to ask me to save it. So what I would save this as, this is really important actually as to what you save it. I need to know what it is. You can see on everything, the way that I save them in my files is listing tax record sheet, so that way I know what it is. But for this one, we were in the folder of listing appointments. I believe that's the right one. And 112 Water's Edge. So what you would save here is, you can see it, most of the time it would come up like this, CRS data property report, but I would just save it as tax record sheet. So then we have that. So then you would just save that. And now we are going to go to the second way that you can find the same information. So let's do that now. Let's close out of this. Second way you would do it from the main home screen on realtrax.net is you would go to search. You don't click on it, you just scroll up to it. Then you scroll down to quick search, click on that. The first thing that I do, if I was finding a tax record sheet this way, or if I wanted to see previous listings for a particular address, it just now saved that. Okay, so here we'll take this off. And so the first thing that I would do is I would select all cities. We don't need to know which city it is. We already have the street number and name. So then I would hit, you see how I entered 112? Then I just tab over. So I hit the tab key, and you can see that brings it over into the second column. You actually have to have the same number in each column here. I don't know why they do that, but it has to be if you want to find the property. So what I do is I enter it in the first one, then I tab over, and then I tab again, and then I would just hit water. I wouldn't even have to do Water's Edge. And another thing that I do on status underneath here is I would hold down the control key and select each one of these: active, pending, closed, expired, and withdrawn. And the reason is because I want to see all of the past times that it's been listed, if it ever sold, if it was taken off of the market, or if the contract ended with the listing agent and they weren't able to sell it. I need to know this. So then, after I've selected all of those statuses, I have the correct street number and name in, and I have all selected on area, then I'll click search. Now you can see here that there are a lot of different properties. So with this, since we have Waterloo, Waterford Way, Water's Edge, then I may try to go ahead and, just to keep it clean, if you want to do this, I would go back to revise search and then Water's Edge. So I would just type it in. You can see that you don't have to type the full word in though to pull up the property. So if you ever running into problems finding it with the full name, go ahead and just make it, first couple of letters of it with the street number and see what comes up. So from this, you can see we have MLS numbers, and there's big numbers and there's smaller. I always click on the MLS number tab, and well, let's see. Okay, there we go. And let me click that one more time, sorry. So from here you can see the largest number appears at the first. The larger the number, the newer the listing was. When listings first started, they probably started at 1, and from there, as every new listing is acquired and inputted onto the multiple listing service, the number is bigger. So the next house after this that was listed was 1193596. So you can see 1193595 is the newest listing on 112 Water's Edge Lane. And you can see Water's Edge, Water's Edge. These are previous times listed. And you can see the status here. It says expired and withdrawn. What this means is we don't see anything saying sold or pending or active, meaning it's not on the market currently, it isn't under contract currently, and it hasn't sold at all that we're showing. So what an expired means is that they had listed with the listing agent, and typically that's about 90 to 180 days that they would be under contract to list with that agent, and that gives that agent the opportunity to try to sell it for 6 months without anyone else stepping in on that transaction, so that they actually get paid to represent that client. Once that contract expires, though, and they don't sell the house, this happens. So that's what happened here. So let's go ahead and go back to the task. I would click on MLS number, the largest one. And since we're trying to find the tax record sheet, the next thing that I would do, it's always in the same place. You are going to see it says tax ID. Sometimes there won't be a number here. And if there isn't, then you have to go the tax record this way. You have to do the tax and then CRS tax system. But for this one, fortunately, we can pull up the tax record sheet from this listing. So I would click on that, and voila, there is our tax record sheet, the same one that we looked at just a minute ago. So it's, you can go either way to pull a tax record sheet. I hope this helps out. We are going to go to further tutorials, more into research, and this is the start, pulling the tax record sheet, and even a hint on the next step. So we'll go ahead and get to that now.